Hello guys, so in this video I'm gonna highlight, some important points that will help you solve homework 5. Homework 5 is not that easy one, it's not straightforward, I confess, but you need to solve such kind of problems, okay, in order to get your hand dirty and get the skill of solving questions or circuits of diodes using the exponential model, okay, similar to the ones that I solved, especially the ones that in which the diode is reversed. Some of the or one of the diodes or two of them is in reverse bias. We solved this example, but without in the lectures, without R1 and R2. Okay, the summary of what happened when we have just the diode without any parallel resistors, R1 and R2 in that case. Okay, the summary is that both are reverse, and when the input was 90 volt, the input 90 volt, okay, VD1 was working in the region which I call the second region or region 2 in reverse, in which the current is fixed at minus I saturation, minus IS or IS1, because these diodes are different. Each one has its own IS. And D2 was working in region 1, in which VD or VD2 in that case is comparable to VT. And it was minus 18 millivolt, if you remember. Okay. And why that happens? Because they have different saturation current, reverse saturation current. So the one that has less saturation current, restricts or make a restriction or limitation on the one which has higher saturation current. Okay, and we give that example that if you are walking with your kid that just learn how to walk, you can't move fast. You should walk with, or you can't run, for example, because you should walk with your kid's speed. Okay, because he just learn how to walk. He don't know how to run yet, or she don't know how to run yet. Okay, but now in that example, this is the first clue. We just avoid such restriction or such limitation. Now each one can be free, because they are not series. So this is the first clue here that you should look at and consider all the time. So D1 and D2 are not in series. So basically, second clue, you can assume that each one, either D1 or D2, is in region 2 or region 3 in the breakdown, I mean. Remember, when we assume it's in region 2 or region 3, this facilitates the solution, because if it's in region 2, you know the current. That's it. One of the unknowns become known. The current, because if you are in region 2, remember the circuit, the characteristics was something like this. So if we change the color, if you are in region 2, ID equal to minus IS, so it's known. Okay, and VD should be negative. Should be negative and less than, so it should be less than 0. I mean negative. It should be minus 1, minus 2, something like this. And at the same time, bigger than minus VBD. So if VBD is 100, so you should find V like minus 5 or minus 9.3, something like this. Something between 0 and minus 100, which is VBD. Okay. If it was in breakdown, let's call it region 3. Then again, one of the unknowns become known, because if you are in breakdown, the voltage will not change. So VD will be minus VBD all the time. If the breakdown voltage is 100, so VD is minus 100. And the current can take any values, but must be negative. So ID will be less than minus IS, or as a magnitude, higher than or greater than is higher than or equal. Why or equal? Because this point here at the edge, you know, it's a transition point. At this point, you are both in region 2 and region 3. Okay, you will start going into the breakdown, but at the same time, you are at the end of region 2. So greater than or equal. Okay. So this is basically, you know, why we interested usually in assuming either region 2 or region 3. Why? Once you assume one of those, one of the unknowns become known. In region 2, ID become known, then you can use this information to find VD. And in region 3, VD become unknown, and you can use this information to find ID. And again, once you assume some assumption, then based on the results, you know if you are correct or if the assumption is correct or incorrect. So that's the basic clue, or that's the basic flow we use to to solve any circuit. I usually do that. Sometimes I cannot guess from the beginning what kind of assumption is correct. But by training, get your hand dirty all the time, teach this, by the time I build the skill. Okay? Good. So the basic clue here is that they are not in series. So but you can assume for sure that both of them in region 2 or region 3, So that's the basic, clue or highlight here that I wanna stress with you. So for question 1 and question 2, this is not multiple choice. It choose from how can I say it? From multiple correct answers. So choose here. So you have here in the answers either question 1 or question 2, multiple correct answers. So choose all of them. Once you choose, if you, for example, if they are 2 and you choose only 1, then you get half of the mark. So you will take half out of 1. Okay, so you must choose both. Then, yes, the rest of the questions is not multiple choice. And again, I want you to train yourself a lot. Okay, that's why I didn't make it multiple choice, because it will be much easier for you. Okay, but I want you to think. I want you to try again and again until until you build the skills, the skill that is required here. Okay, but one thing to put in mind when you solve such problem is that all the values will be integers. Okay, you will not have like 18 millivolt, something like that. No, everything will be integers. 20 minus 20, of course, because the voltage, they are in reverse, so the voltage should be negative for sure. Okay, so put this in mind. Everything is in integers. Okay, integer volts or integer microamperes if we are talking about a current, for example. Like, for example, minus 3 microamperes. I'm not saying one of the answers is minus 3. I'm not saying, I'm giving an example. Okay, so that's also a very good hint for you. It's not multiple choice, but I give you a hint for the answer. If you find yourself getting 1.1 or something like this, then you are out. You have something wrong. You have messed up. Okay. What else? So, yeah, like the problem that we solved in the lecture, we did it at V input equal to 90 and V input equal to 110. At 90, there was no breakdown. At 110, there was a breakdown. Okay. Here, you will not find a change. I mean, the voltages will change from 90 to 110, of course, because you increased the V input, but the state will not change. So I will leave this for you to understand it. Okay, I will not go much beyond that. Yes. For question 11, which is really smart, And when you solve it, you will feel happy because you have done something, good, which is find the input voltage at which the diode will break down. Okay. And I mean by that question is to find the minimum input that we can put, the minimum battery voltage that we can put to turn diode 1 into reverse, I'm sorry, into breakdown. So assume that, for example, we can change slightly, the power source, the input, or the battery. Okay. Let's assume, I don't know, but let's assume at 90, at 90, there was no breakdown. So we must increase this input so that the diode go into breakdown. So assume that this battery can be changed until what value we should increase this the input so that D1 go to breakdown. It may be my less than my, it may be maybe in that question the diodes are in breakdown at 9. Maybe this is your duty to solve that or find out that. Okay, so you must find in that question 11 here, the value of the input at which D1 goes into breakdown. And remember, we are if we just switch it if we are on the edge of the breakdown, okay, this point here, this one that I just highlighted at the beginning, at this point, which is a transition point belonging to the region 2 and region 3, at that point, okay, this is the point at which the input minimum or the minimum input will be applied to the circuit. So such that when you increase, by 1 microvolt, then you go into the breakdown. So at this minimum input, D1 will be operating at that point. So at that point, VD is equal to minus V breakdown, and the ID equal to minus IS. You may say, but this is region 2. Again, this is a transition point. It belongs to the breakdown in which the current exceeds IS, but it starts from IS. Okay? And at the same time, it also belongs to region 2. So at that point, the current is still IS. That's why I put here greater than or equal, because it will be equal at the transition point. So to find this input voltage, the minimum input voltage that you should put here at the input so that D1 go into breakdown, okay, you at that moment, this will be the unknown, and you should assume here the voltage in that direction equal to minus V breakdown, and the current moving in that direction and equal to minus IS1. Okay. Then number 12. Number 12 and number 13. So number 12 is basically similar to number 11. What is the input voltage at which D2 will break down, not D1? Okay. And you cannot solve this without solving 11, and you cannot solve this without, you can, of course. But I want you to think first about number 13 before solving number 12. In number 13, I'm asking you which diode will go into breakdown first. Okay, so I'm giving you the fact here. In that circuit, the diodes will not go at the same time into breakdown. One of them will lead the other. D1, of course, I will not tell you, but D1 might lead D2, I mean, it goes first into breakdown and become breakdown while D2 is still not breakdown, or the opposite. I mean, D2 leads and D1 still in breakdown. You should figure out just by looking at the questions order. Okay, I will not go beyond that. So basically in here, okay, you should figure out which one will lead, which one will go, or you know, guess, at least guess, not as a fact, that one of them will lead, okay, or we'll go to breakdown first. Then, for the second one, to get its input voltage at which the diode will go into breakdown, okay, at that point, remember the first diode is in breakdown already. I will not explain more. So when you find the minimum input, the minimum voltage of the battery at which the second diode will go into breakdown, at that time the first diode is already in breakdown. Okay, I will not go further on that. Okay, one last thing here to mention is that this is not a numerical. This is not a numerical answer. Okay, I am asking here which one will go into breakdown first. So if you figure out that D1 will go first, then write D capital 1 without a space between the 1 and the D. If you figure out that D2 will lead, just write D2 without a space between the D and the 2. Okay. One last thing to mention here is that I increased the number of attempts to submit. So basically, first write your answers in a piece of paper. Okay, review it carefully. Then you have 2 times to submit. So I give you 2 attempts, guys, not just 1 attempt. So after the first attempt, you know, just to try to figure out which one is wrong, you know, think again and submit your final attempt, which is second. And I will take the highest. I will take the highest attempt. So if you get, for example, I can't remember how much here, the grade, the final grade, let's check. I don't know, but let's assume the highest grade is 20. So if in the first one you get 15, but in the second one you get 18, then I will take the 18. Or Canvas will consider the 18, not the 15. Okay, guys. So good luck with this assignment. It's really good to do it by your hand. You know, it will give you for sure. It will give you, you know, the kind of skills that I want you to acquire from such part of the course. So good luck. Bye bye.